Hey guys, it's Jane. I'm here today to do a taster video. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago that I thought I might do it. I'm not in my normal setup today because I decided this was a little bit of reading and I was just going to do it sitting on the couch. So I apologise for the, less than exciting backdrop, but I'm going to be comfortable and I hope you're comfortable too. As I read you a little bit of Neal Stephenson's Quicksilver. So this is the first of the Baroque cycle, and the part that I'm going to read you involves Daniel Waterhouse, who's one of the main characters, and Daniel's friend Isaac Newton. At this stage, they're both students at the university, and you'll find out what they're up to. Anyway, here we go with Quicksilver. Daniel and Isaac roamed for the better part of an hour, ignoring the shouts and pleadings of the retailers on all sides, until finally Isaac stopped, alert, and sidestepped over to a small folding display case on legs that a tall, slender Jew in a black coat had set up. Daniel eyed this son of Moses curiously. Cromwell had readmitted these people to England only 10 years previously, after they'd been excluded for centuries, and they were as exotic as giraffes. But Isaac was staring at a constellation of gem-like objects laid out on a square of black velvet. Noting his interest, the Kohan folded back the edges of the cloth to reveal many more: concave and convex lenses, flat discs of good glass for grinding your own, bottles of abrasive powder in several degrees of coarseness, and prisms. Isaac signalled that he would be willing to open negotiations over two of the prisms. The lens grinder inhaled, drew himself up, and blinked. Daniel moved round to a supporting position, behind and to the side of Isaac. "You have pieces of 8, the circumcised one said, midway between an assertion and a question. "I know that your folk once lived in a kingdom where that was the coin of the realm, sir," Isaac said, "but you know nothing. My people did not come from Spain, they came from Poland." "You have French coins, the louis d'or?" "The louis d'or is a beautiful coin, befitting the glory of the Sun King," Daniel put in, "and probably much used wherever you came from." "Amsterdam?" "London." "You intend to compensate me then with what? Joachim's thalers?" "As you, sir, are English, and so am I, let us use English means." "You wish to trade cheese, tin, broadcloth?" "How many shillings will buy these 2 prisms?" The Hebraic one adopted a haggard, suffering look and gazed at a point above their heads. "Let me see the colour of your money," he said, in a voice that conveyed gentle regret, as if Isaac might have bought some prisms today, and instead would only get a dreary lesson in the unbelievable shabbiness of English coinage. Isaac reached into a pocket and wiggled his fingers to produce a metallic tromping noise that proved that many coins were in there. Then he pulled out a handful and let the lens grinder have a glimpse of a few coins tarnished black. Daniel, so far, was startled by how good Isaac was at this kind of thing. On the other hand, he had made a business out of lending money to other students. Maybe he had a talent. "You must have made a mistake," said the Jew, "which is perfectly all right. We all make mistakes. You reached into the wrong pocket and you pulled out your black money, the stuff that you throw to beggars." "So I did," Isaac said. "Pardon me. Where's the money for paying merchants?" Patting a few other pockets. "By the way, assuming I'm not going to offer you black money, how many shillings?" "When you say shillings, I assume you mean the new ones." "The James the First?" No, James the First died half a century ago, and so one would not normally use the adjective new to describe pounds minted during his reign." "Did you say pounds?" Daniel asked. pound is rather a lot of money, and so it strikes me as not relevant to this transaction, which has all the appearances of a shilling type affair at most. Well, let us use the word coins until I know whether you speak of the new or of the old. New meaning coins minted, say, during our lifetimes? I mean the Restoration coinage, the Israelite said. Or perhaps your professors have neglected to inform you that Cromwell is dead and interregnum coils demonetised these last 3 years. Why, I believe I have heard that the king is beginning to mint new coins, Isaac said, looking to Daniel for confirmation. My half-brother in London knows someone who saw a gold Carolus II de Gratia coin once, displayed in a crystal case on a silken pillow, Daniel said. People have begun to call them guineas because they're made of gold that the Duke of York's company is taking out of Africa. I say, Daniel, is it true what they say, that those coins are perfectly circular? They are, Isaac. Not like the good old English hammered coins that you and I carry in such abundance in our pockets and purses. Furthermore, said the Ashkenazi, the king brought with him a French savant, Monsieur Blondeau, on loan from King Louis, and that fellow built a machine that mills delicate ridges and inscriptions into the edge of the coins. Typical French extravagance, Isaac said. The king really did spend more time than was good for him in Paris, Daniel said. On the contrary, the forelocked one said, if someone clips or files a bit of metal off the edge of a round coin with a milled edge, it is immediately obvious. That must be why everyone is melting those new coins down as fast as they are minted and shipping the metal to the Orient, Daniel began. Making it impossible for the likes of me and my friend to obtain them, Isaac finished. Now there is a good idea. If you can show me coins of a bright silver colour, not that black stuff, I'll weigh them and accept them as bullion. Bullion, sir? Yes. I have heard that this is the practice in China, Isaac said sagely, but here in England, a shilling is a shilling. No matter how little it weighs? Yes, in principle, yes. So, when a lump of metal is coined in the mint, it takes on a magical power of shillingness, and even after it's been filed and clipped and worn down to a mere featureless nodule, it's still worth a full shilling. You exaggerate, Daniel said. I have here a fine Queen Elizabeth shilling, for example, which I carry around, mind you, as a souvenir of Gloriana's reign, since it is far too fine a specimen to actually spend. But as you can see, it is just as bright and shiny as the day it was minted. Especially where it's recently been clipped there along the side, the lens grinder said. Normal, pleasing irregularity of the hand-hammered currency, nothing more, Isaac said. My friend's shilling, though magnificent and arguably worth 2 or even 3 shillings in the market, is no anomaly. Here I have a shilling from the reign of Edward VI, which I obtained after an inebriated son of a duke who happened to have borrowed a shilling from me some time earlier fell unconscious on the floor, and the purse in which he carried his finest coins fell open, and this rolled out of it. I construed this as repayment of the debt, and the exquisite condition of the coin as interest. How could it roll when 3 of its edges are flat? It's nearly triangular, the lens grinder said. A mere trick of the light. The problem with that Edward VI coinage is that, for all I knew, it might have been issued during the Great Debasement, when, before Sir Thomas Gresham could get matters in hand, prices doubled. The inflation was not because the coins were debased, as some believe, Daniel said. It was because the wealth confiscated from the papist monasteries and cheap silver from the mines of New Spain were flooding the country. If you would allow me to approach within 10 feet of these coins, it would help me to appreciate their numismatic excellence, the lens grinder said. I could even use some of my magnifying lenses to... I'm afraid I would be offended, Isaac said. You can expect this one as closely as you want, Daniel said, "and find no evidence of criminal tampering. I got it from a blind innkeeper who had suffered frostbite in the fingertips. He had no idea what he was giving me." "Didn't he think to bite down on it, like so?" said the Judaic individual, taking the shilling and crushing it between his rear molars. "What would he have learned from doing that, sir?" "That whatever counterfeit artist stamped it out had used reasonably good metal, not above 50% lead." "We will choose to interpret that as a wry jest," Daniel said, "the likes of which you should never direct against this shilling, which my half-brother found lying on the ground at the Battle of Naseby, not far from fragments of a royalist captain who'd been blown to pieces by a bursting cannon. The dead man was, you see, a captain who once stood guard at the Tower of London where new coins were minted." The Jew repeated the biting ceremony, then scratched at the coin in case it was a brass clinker japanned with silver paint. "Worthless. But I owe a shilling to a certain vile man in London, a hater of Jews, and I would derive a shilling's worth of satisfaction from slipping this slug of pig iron into his hand." "Very well, then," said Isaac, reaching for the prisms. "Avid collectors such as you two must also have pennies?" "My father hands out shiny new ones as Christmas presents," Daniel said. 3 years ago—" But he suspended the anecdote when he noticed that the lens grinder was paying attention not to him, but to a commotion behind them. Daniel turned around and saw that it was a man reasonably well-heeled, having trouble walking, even though a friend and a servant were supporting him. He had a powerful desire to lie down, it seemed, which was most awkward as he happened to be wading through ankle-deep mud. The servant slipped a hand between the man's upper arms and his ribs to bear him up, but the man shrieked like a cat who'd been mangled under a cartwheel and convulsed backwards, and landed full length on his back, hurling up a coffin wave shaped of mud that spattered things yards away. "Take your prisms," said the merchant, practically stuffing them into Isaac's pocket. He began folding up his display case. If he felt the way Daniel did, then it wasn't the sight of the man feeling ill or falling down that made him pack up and leave, so much as the sound of that scream. Isaac was walking towards the sick man with the cautious but direct gait of a tightrope walker. "Shall we back to Cambridge, then?" Daniel suggested. "I have some knowledge of the arts of the apothecary," Isaac said. "Perhaps I could help him." A circle of people had gathered to observe the sick man, but it was a very broad circle, empty except for Isaac and Daniel. The victim appeared now to be trying to get his breeches off, but his arms were rigid, so he was trying to do it by writhing free of his clothes. His servant and his friend were tucking at the cuffs, but the breeches seemed to have stuck to his legs. Finally, the friend drew his dagger, slashed through the cuffs left and right, and then ripped the pants leg open from bottom to top, or perhaps the force of the swelling thighs burst them. They came off anyway. Friend and servant backed away, affording Isaac and Daniel a clear vantage point that would have enabled them to see all the way up to the man's groin if the view hadn't been blocked by black globes of taut flesh stacked like cannonballs in his inner thighs. The man had stopped writhing and screaming now because he was dead. Daniel had taken Isaac's arm and was rather firmly pulling him back, but Isaac continued to approach the specimen. Daniel looked round and saw that suddenly there was no one within musket range. Horses and tents had been abandoned, backloads of goods spilled on the ground as by porters now halfway to Ely. "I can see the buboes expanding, even though the body is dead," Isaac said. "The generative spirit lives on, transmuting dead flesh into something else, just as maggots are generated out of meat and silver grows beneath mountains. Why does it bring death sometimes and life others?" That they lived was evidence that Daniel eventually pulled Isaac away and got him pointed back up the river towards Cambridge. Okay, that was a taste of Quicksilver by Neal Stephenson. I hope you're all well, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!